This video is brought to you by 3, bringing you 4G at no extra cost and some exclusive deals over at btech.com.
Welcome to btech. It is Basil here comparing two screens. The first is the Sony Xperia Z2 on the left, and on the right hand side is the HTC One 2014 M8, whatever you want to call it. These are two gorgeous full HD panels, 5.2 inches on the Sony Xperia Z2 and 5 inches on the HTC One M8. We're going to start off by putting them side by side. As you can see, these are at full brightness, and you should just be able to make out the really striking differences right here, and that is that the HTC One's display doesn't pack quite the same level of punchiness and saturation as the Sony Xperia Z2. Now that may not be a bad thing, because if we take a look on the bottom left hand side, you can actually see the Sony Xperia Z2's whites aren't quite as color accurate. Let's keep it like so. You can see head on, maybe it's a little bright, but there's an indigo hue to the whites, whereas on the HTC One, the whites just look very, very white indeed. Again, very, very bright, but you can definitely make out improved whiteness despite the fact you have less saturation on there. Off the cuff, that immediately suggests that the HTC One might be a little bit better for reading websites, for example, not to mention reading ebooks, etc., against a white background. As for the Sony Xperia Z2, given the punchiness, it might be better for viewing videos, viewing movies, for multimedia purposes, although the HTC One is by no means dull. It just isn't as punchy as the Sony Xperia Z2. Now we can move on to contrast, and you can actually see on the Sony Xperia Z2, if we bring it closer into frame, let the camera focus, we can make out the difference in contrast between 2% and 3% white. So that's pretty much where the tonal dynamic range fades out on the Sony Xperia Z2. On the HTC One though, it's probably more between 3 and 4%, giving us a slightly, ever so slightly less tangible tonal difference. As for real world benefits to having that additional tonal variance on the Sony Xperia Z2, it's not really all that tangible, but anyone who wants to know how they fare when held side by side, hopefully now you do. As for the rest of the information, you can pretty much make it out on here. One interesting thing to note is the fact that the color calibration is so different. This yellow ring around the Sony Xperia Z2, for example, is tangibly orange around the HTC One. So there is a very, very different color calibration. You might want to see side by side, put some images that you're familiar with against both so you can see which one is preferential to you, given the fact both of these phones are so good, and given the fact color and saturation are such subjective things. Now we can take a quick scroll through the user interfaces so you can just see how the screens perform in general when thumbing through. And the first thing you'll probably notice is how incredibly smooth both are. Unsurprisingly, despite the full HD resolution, they both pack Qualcomm Snapdragon 801 processors in there. You've got 3 GB of RAM on the Xperia Z2 and 2 GB of RAM on the HTC One. So hopefully you have enjoyed our screen comparison. If you've got any questions about either of these flagships, ping them in the comments section below. If you like this video, make sure you click like, and if you do like btech's channel in general, subscribe and head over to btech.com, where you can find more about the latest smartphones, tablets, smart gadgets, not to mention some awesome deals as well.
At the top of the screen is where you can find 3 hand-picked videos for your viewing pleasure. On the left is where you can subscribe, and on the right hand side you can find some exclusive deals if you head over to btech.com.